Hello, good evening. Hope you can hear me well. I am joining from quite a long distance today, so it will be a pleasure to share with you. I'll introduce myself in a while, but I hope you're gonna enjoy today's lecture on the open source AI. And we're gonna talk about where it makes sense for you, why should you use it first place. So thanks a lot for Soft Uni AI to host this session and hope you're gonna enjoy. So let me get into the things right away so we don't burn that much of an entry time. I think you didn't come to kind of think about or listen to who I am, but it would be a little bit fair as we see for the first time to introduce myself a little bit. So I try to do it as short and as funny as I can. So my name is Filip Vitek, and I happen to be the Executive Vice President of the AI and Data for Consult. AI has been my passion for, and data has been my passion for quite a long time. So it's been already 22 years. Oh, gee, it really is a long time. Before I started to kind of work on this, and all of my career, I've been working on a data projects and AI, building it in different industries. I have to say that it's been mainly kind of in a machine learning and natural language processing, so text analytics. Lately, I've been really working on also a lot of computer vision projects, so using images and videos. But as this topic has been also my passion, I am like a long-term expert blog writer, more than 300 blogs written on a portal called themightydata.com. I'm gonna refer to some of the topics that I'm gonna talk today because we will not have a time to go through everything in detail. So if you're interested, you definitely go there and find more materials on some of the topics. However, what I would definitely like you to get to know and get to try is the Mindset AI podcast. So together with my co-host David, we go through hot topics of the AI. We try to focus on explaining the things, kind of giving you a chance to form opinion, not necessarily just like what the news is, like which model was released which week. That's not what we talk about. And we have a dedicated session which is about open source AI, which is going to some extent overlap with what I'm going to talk today about. I'm going to use some ideas from that podcast, but there's much more. So if you want to hear the whole story, it's free to view on YouTube or on a Shopify. Just feel free to take the QR link and follow it and watch us to talk about the AI and open source AI in more detail. So that's about it. Now, I also mentioned Common Salt. So just very telegraphically, what is Common Salt? And maybe why I want to talk to you today about the open source. So maybe you should know about me that even though I am like executive vice president of AI, so I'm like responsible for making a strategy and deciding which AI technologies will be used, I didn't study computer science. I'm a little bit of a weird animal, so I started as a business major. And why I'm saying this, because I know that a lot of Soft Uni spectators or members or educators are also following this pathway that you started somewhere outside of the AI and you try to make yourself into the AI. So I am a kind of a living example that it's possible. So keep on going, and it is really giving you also a bit of an edge, because in AI and data analytics, one thing is to know what technologies to use, but then you need to know also the context. Because, for instance, machine learning models are only as good as the parameters which you put into them. So that's what you need to keep in mind. I don't want to bore you with too many of my history. What I want to say that all of my life I was trying to build a data teams or AI teams for different industries. And the most recent one, Common Salt, just 2 sentences about what we do. So we are a leading provider on a US market, so in America, of live selling. So selling through video. It's, I would say, a kind of modern form of teleshopping. I'm going to refer to use cases of AI that we use for this company. So I just wanted to let you know that for the context, we operate 3 different platforms for kind of a more traditional sales channels like e-commerce, which is called Common Salt, then for Shopify, which is called Video, and then we have something for creators, which is Pop Store, newly launched. And in our, we would do like 2 million minutes of video analysis every quarter. So that gives you a bit of an idea how much AI is needed to actually go through that. Okay, enough of me. Let's go into what our topic of today is. And that's open source AI. So there are many angles that you can look at an open source AI, and I will explain for us what it is first place. But I would not like to focus on what it is as much. I mean, this word cloud gives a bit of idea. What is big here is what we're going to talk mainly about today. So I want to talk about why this is important for your company and for yourself as well, because I don't want to talk about this only from the angle of who you're going to work at. I want to talk about it from you as a person involved in it. Why is it important for you? And a little bit how. Okay, and the rest of the things like where to go, what, I will mention it, but I think this is not what we try to do today. I would like you to walk with an idea, yes, does it make sense for me to work on open source AI? And if I want to, what shall I do? Okie dokie. So I think what would be fair to start with is to have exactly defined what open source is in AI. And I'm no mean academical, so I don't want to go into the dictionary and try to give you an idea of what the dictionary says about it. But I think it is important to mention what it is. And I would also like to mention that during the presentation, you can go to the Slido and you can ask questions. I'll try to answer them till the end. So please stay tuned. I'll try to answer all of them. I would like you to also be very active in asking, because I am bringing this here and an inspiration for you. So you should be kind of taking the most of it. So first 5 questions per person are for free, and then we can see where we take it from there. So what exactly is open source in AI? So maybe those of you who worked a little bit with the software are familiar with the concept of the open source in software. So in software, when you say open source, what it really means is that you have something which you have a right to use. So basically you can take it, implement it in your company, use it, and you don't have to pay for it. Many of the things that we used to work back then are kind of open source. Many of the web browsers which we work on are open source. Many of the zipping tools that we work are open source. So there is quite a few things where open source is present. In order to make the open source in software usable, you also need to have a code to actually run, right? So that's the essence of it. And maybe some people would look at it also in a way that, okay, I don't want to only have a version which you release now, because if I start to use it as my main software in our company or in my life, I want to make sure it's like usable or up to date also 3-5 years from now. So what you need to know is that a lot of people think about open source also in terms of like who is going to maintain it. Is there a community behind that which is going to improve? And if this tool, like this zipping tool or this web browser, needs to have a new type of functionalities, who will bring it up? So the situation on the AI domain is a little bit different. Even though we kind of frame the open source on the AI, on the software this way, on AI it's a bit different in a way that includes some things which are similar. So we will immediately spot that also for the AI domain, the license or the right to use is actually pretty important, because it is essentially your ticket to having it available and not having to pay for that. You also need to have some codes to run, which is similarity, but that's where the similarity with the open source software stops. And on top of it, open source AI has 3 more elements. Now, some of practitioners like myself would argue that 2 of them are not necessary, and we will come to that why I think so. But what you definitely need is you need to have a model, so an AI cooked final result, usually in a form like a large matrix of zeros and ones, and these model weights are the ones which you actually run. So you have the underlying information how to transform, for instance, your text into the image. So it's encoded into these model weights. And you need also a little bit of a code around it, because like you will not go and multiply the metrics yourself. You need to have a software to do it. And that's what the code around. Now, there are 2 elements which are not necessary, but a lot of people, especially in academia, are pushing for it. Because they say, okay, But it's not really fair for you to give us a model if we don't know what you train it on. Because if you train it on a wrong data, it's going to give us a wrong result, and we better know that, because maybe we want to have like a chance to retrain it ourselves. So then these two elements, which are in a gray areas like open training data and training procedures, some people say that you should have it, and if you don't have it, it's not really open source. With all the honesty, for people like you and me, that doesn't really matter, because if you had enough processor power to actually retrain the model, you would be able to train the model yourself first place. So most of us don't expect to take a model and retrain it or change it. We expect to use it. Like, we don't want to go to ChatGPT and start to like change ChatGPT or DeepSeek or whatever you're using, right? So we want to make sure that it's running. So therefore, these two elements are not that necessary. But a lot of people, you will hear that it's not fair. For instance, Meta is not releasing what their training procedure is. Well, for what we're going to talk today, I think it doesn't really matter. So let me move on. After we defined what the AI domain is, let me move on and talk a little bit about, so why is it good and why is it not? I mean, this would be great as an interactive session, but when we were doing a test recording, I realized that there is quite some lag between me here in Berlin talking to you and you being somewhere in beautiful Bulgaria, hopefully somewhere around Nines Mountains or whatever beach you want to go. So for that sake, unfortunately, I have to do this myself, even though I would appreciate this to be a common access. So, but maybe you can do the thought experiment with me. So think for a few seconds and let's talk about proprietary AI. So proprietary AI is an AI that you need to pay for, right? It's, let's say, a paid version of the ChatGPT. It's AI Claude. It can be Kling or whatever. So some model that you have to pay for. And let's start with, like, what do you think would be the positive of it? So take a few seconds to think about what do you believe is good about these paid models. What most people agree on is that you would expect the paid model to be state of art. So you would not pay for something which is like subpar or is not good enough. So usually it also has a little bit of a propelling factor. So if you pay for something, then the company developing it has more money to develop it even further. This was always a little bit the issue of open source solutions, like, okay, well, but it needs to be developed. Who pays for the development? So you would expect that the proprietary models would be somewhat stronger. Also, very often they would be relatively easy to use because they want their software to be easy to use, because they want to have as many users as possible. So they will try to make it somewhat more comfortable for you to use. And what is the biggest advantage of proprietary AI, and we're going to come to that point several times today, is it's ready to use out of the box. What that means is, if you need to know in this minute, like, what is the coding suggestion or what is the suggestion from open source or ChatGPT or whoever is using that for a particular thing, you go to the portal and you ask the question, you put a prompt and you get an answer. That's not always true with open source. And this is kind of what is the advantage of the proprietary models. But as is the case, proprietary models also have their disadvantages. So if you look at it, it's mostly like high cost to use, right? Because usually the companies are charging premium because OpenAI is the best one. So you can kind of, if you really want to work on the best one, you have to pay for that. Also, what people don't realize is, but many of the models will limit you in what you can do. They will say, I will not generate the image of this famous person because it's against my rules, because I don't want to be sued by this famous person for generating their images. I will not, I will not generate the particular text about, I don't know, Nazi history, because I don't find it ethical to do that. So these are things which come as well. What is also important and people don't realize, but a lot of the AI is done by the startups. And startups are born, but they also die. So maybe you have a model from a company which is not doing well. Maybe they simply going to kind of go bankrupt. And then there is nobody to develop your model. Sometimes nobody even to service your model. So that's a very big danger that a lot of companies think about, especially in these early times where it's not clear like who is going to survive. Like now, when you're buying operating system from Microsoft, like you don't expect that Microsoft goes bankrupt and the Windows will not work next week or the month after, right? But with open source AI, you're de-risking this because a lot of the companies in AI proprietary businesses are now a little bit on the edge of will they survive or will they not. Of course, what is also important is a cost trap, and we're going to talk about it. But because maybe the service looks nice and it's like, okay, who cares about 20 euros or $20 paid for paid version of Claude or ChatGPT. Now you don't know if it's going to be $20. Next year it can be $200. And you say, okay, well then I stop using it. But if you're a company and you build your product or your system on it, then it's a big problem. So proprietary software has this cost trap issue which needs to be important. Also on top of that, there is a capacity issue that while this proprietary software is like serving the whole globe. Anybody can log into ChatGPT and use it. So when last week there was this Ghibli new release, I guess many of you have seen it or tried it, they have to limit the access to it because so many people were trying that their servers were kind of melting down. So that's the thing. Now, very often, what is a detriment or minus of the proprietary systems can be a benefit of the open source. So let's look at it. So what open source is good for, it's much lower costs compared to proprietary softwares. It's free to use. It usually does not give you any restrictions. You can decide what you want to do. You want to do a Nazi pictures? Well, if you have a good reason for it, off you go. The open source will not limit you per se, right? It will not allow you to do unethical or illegal things. Let's leave aside. But it will be not very picky like what you can or what you cannot do. Also, we don't have any vendor dependency, and the prices with open source are relatively fixed. So we're going to talk about it. But once you build your open source solution, it's relatively fixed price. So you don't have to worry about the future costs. Of course, open source is not just all roses. It also has a lot of interesting downsides. So first of all, it usually needs a lot of testing and tuning. So it's not that easy, and that's the direct opposite to already out of the box. So this is why a lot of companies go after paid models, because they don't have this passion to train or test, or maybe they are hiring to do something and they don't have a time to do it. Also, sometimes the integration might be not that trivial, and some upgrades might be not guaranteed. So maybe the open source project dies, nobody supports it anymore, and then you're left with whatever version was last delivered, and you have to think about it. So this is what it is. But optically, and this is not intentionally, this is like being a fair representation, if you look at it, open source has more positives and less negatives than proprietary AI. So all in all, it makes a lot of sense to use open source AI, and I want to therefore walk you today with how we're going to do that. Now, maybe you ask yourself, okay, we talked about it on a previous slide that the paid models are usually the state of art, and then open source are somewhat worse. So the question was always, and we debate this heavily in the episode of the Mindset podcast, which I provided a link for, and I will do that again at the end of the presentation. So we debated heavily what's the gap between the best ones, best paid and best free models. And when we started to deal with it, I'm actually tracking it on a regular basis. And I can tell you when we started to track this, it was about 15%. So let's say ChatGPT as the best paid model back then would be about 15% better than the best open source model. Now, you might think, is it enough? Is it not? A lot of people were willing to pay for the extra 15%. But if you think about it, for like regular business, it probably doesn't really matter. You also don't buy like Porsche or Rolls-Royce as your company car. I mean, Rolls-Royce and Porsche are certainly better than Skoda or Daewoo, right? But like, do you really need to have Rolls-Royce as your company car? Probably not. And the same is true here. But funny enough, even in recent times, the open source models got so good that they actually closed the gap to almost zero. Sometimes they are even leading. So you probably heard it within the February and March, there was like a big turmoil about the DeepSeek model from China. So actually at that time when it was released, it was the best model on the market. So even though it was open source, it was actually better than the paid versions of Grok and ChatGPT. So that gives you a little bit of idea that even if the 15% was bothering you in the past, now we're entering an era where open source is, when it comes to the quality, really at par with the proprietary or paid solutions. Now then, that makes you think, okay, so that's insane. So if I can have equally best model to use for free, it almost sounds like too good to be true. So where it can possibly go wrong? And the answer is that it's in the implementation part. So it brings some extra requirements on you to make the open source AI use good. And this is what I want to spend most of our time today to explain what exactly you should expect, maybe how to get it, maybe what to educate yourself in order to get better in. So, but what I want you to remember is that if somebody kind of starts to talk about, yeah, but like this open source, this is a shitty, not really good, I'd rather go with the paid version, well, you can remind him or her that it's not true anymore. They are getting really at par. Okay, so when you say, all right, so if the open source is so good, is it really used? And I would ask a question. So again, would be a great quiz, but we don't have a chance to do that now on a Slido. But if you had an idea of, okay, what would you say? Let's give a bit of a guessing with yourself. Think about it for a while. What would you guess is the percentage of the AI projects that are using open source versus the projects which are using paid version of the AI? And I'm talking about the business projects. I'm not talking like a hobby thing. I want to do a short movie, or like I want to Ghiblify my whole family last week. So let's talk about the real business projects. So what would you expect is the share of open source? Take a few seconds to think about it before we get to the answer. All right. I'm not sure if you guessed right, but the correct answer is 35%. So what that means is more than 1/3 of all products, all solutions which are built in AI domain are built dominantly on an AI. That means that the open source AI is the main component of it. Maybe it has small paid element, but more than 50% of it is coming from open source. Now, if you add up on top of it, maybe there are some solutions which is reversed, so they are not using dominantly open source AI, but they are using it maybe just in a part of it, you will get well about 50%. So more than every second project actually has some element of the open source AI. So this might strike you, because I guess that you probably, before this lecture, I would assume that many of you haven't had any interaction with open source AI in terms of like you would be trying to do about it. Maybe you stumbled upon it on the web when you were trying. I guess that you could have played with Stable Diffusion, or like you could have had a like Llama or DeepSeek experience. But like for building it within your work, I guess most of the people have not that experience. But what I want to convey with this message is that it's perfectly normal, and it's getting more and more a standard. So if you believe you want to like live in a life of AI solutions, honestly, I strongly encourage you, and this is why I'm doing also this webinar, I strongly encourage you to think about it and to try to bring it to a real use in your life, because I think you will need it, right? I think we're also very fair. Like, we're going to talk about the principles, but we should not stay like very shallow. So let me maybe explain also a specific open source models, which some of them you might know, some of them not, but so that you have also a feeling what to look for and what to go after. So we're going to talk about Hugging Face as a platform where all the open source AI models are actually collecting. But what I want to say is that on this platform itself is stunning 1.5 million. Let me repeat that. 1.5 million of the models are being already hosted on Hugging Face. Can you imagine? Like, think about it as an analogy. So open source model is something like a free car you can take and ride around. Can you imagine that there is a place where there is like 1.5 million free cars? You can take any of them, you can ride them, you can crash them if you wish to. It's absolutely up to you. It's stunning. It's really amazing how much of the AI is actually free to have. And I think this is going to be one of the factors why the AI is going to progress even faster. Because now, if you really want to do some AI application and you're somewhat more clever and you're not lazy just to do it with the paid version, there is quite sure a model out there which is good enough for you that you can use for free. So that's the power of it. Now, many of you think about open source or AI in general more through kind of chatbots or LLMs, like large language models. So in an area of going from text to text, so you put a text input and you expect a text output, being it a code, being it an essay, being it summary or whatever. The most two used are Llama, which you probably heard of. This is from Meta, so Facebook basically. And Flan, which is from Google. This one you probably haven't heard of because most people know about Gemini, but Gemini is not that open source, to be honest. Like, it is to some extent, but they have also a version of Flan which is fully open source, which you can then use. And we're going to come to that in a while. When it comes to generating images, so two most famous platforms to open source platforms to use to generate images out of the text are Stable Diffusion, which is generating the images out of your description, or you can also provide like an input image and it's going to try to morph, like face swap you into the image and so on. The alternative is a German Black Forest Labs model called Flux. Flux is really a state-of-the-art model, and it's actually beating many paid models in rankings. So it's amazing that it's free, and it's literally a good resource to try. When it comes to text to video, so you give a prompt in writing and it generates a video out of you. So you put a description and it creates a video for you. This is interesting because this is an area where the Chinese models are very strong. Like, in generating images, they are kind of okay. They are middle. In text to text, they have now DeepSeek, so it's getting better and better. But in video, they are already dominating. If you only see what they can do already in Asia, and all the big e-commerce companies like Baidu and TikTok and others, they have amazing models, really amazing models, and they, like in video, they are really ahead of everything else. So that's great. Now, what is more, we have also transcriptions. So I think I selected these 4 areas plus one, which is going to come in a while, because I believe that this is the most common things which you're going to use for open source. You're either going to like take text and transform it into the other text, or you're going to generate images, or you're going to generate videos, or you're going to take an audio or video and transcribe it into the text and use it. So in transcription services, the OpenAI Whisper, which is an open source model, and NVIDIA Canary Flash are the best ones. And the last category I want to mention before we move on is Qwen. So this is like a thinking models, so reasoning models, and here DeepSeek and Qwen are really strong ones. Again, both of them coming from Asia. So an interesting part that in these most progressive parts, the things are going really fast. I wanted also to tell you real examples that you can see how that works. So I'm bringing 3.5 examples from our own company. So as I said, Common Soul is a company which helps people to sell through video. So most of our use cases are based on a video. Our first product was called AI Clip Hero, and basically it's an autonomous video editor. So it takes a long selling session, like 90 minutes long, and what it does, it actually automatically selects a clip. So it's a kind of a video editor which autonomously goes through the whole duration of the cell video, finds a good clip, cuts it out, transcribes it, and puts the subtitles so that you can post it on a social media automatically. No human ever touched that video, all done by AI automatically. So it knows where the video starts, where it should finish, where it should cut, how it should be transcribed, how to make it most emotionally appealing on the social media. This is a product which we also is so good that it was also featured on TechCrunch. So if you want to read more about it, I left 2 links for you, either of a TechCrunch or our own sites to read about it. Now, we didn't stop there, and we said, okay, what is the common problem if any of you are working for e-commerce and you happen to be in fashion or goods that are kind of weekly coming? The problem here is that you want to have yourself modeled in the dress. So this lady is selling the dress, but for her, in order to sell it, she needs to wait for the samples, then she has to take a photo shoot. Then the photo shoot needs to be kind of turned into the images, uploaded onto the web page, and that's the moment when she can sell the first piece. Sometimes she asks for samples, they are not the right size, they have to come back and the new one have to come. It's a lot of back and forth. Usually the time for them to market is like 3 weeks. So from the moment she sees something on a distributor web page, oh, I would like to sell this, to the moment she can sell first piece takes 3 weeks. Now, what if we say, okay, you give us your face, you give us your full body images, and we dress you into whatever you wish. And this is what the Model Me product is about. So this girl never ever had that dress on her. And you can see that the image is like fully photorealistic and she can use it. And we didn't even stop there. We said, okay, maybe you don't want to present the products only by being like dressed into it. Maybe you want to also like animate yourself. So our next thing was Move Me, where we actually take the outfit. We can choose any background that you can think of. Look how authentic the view is. And we can create whatever video you can think of. In Asia, they go even further. They even have a real person talking that you would not actually realize it's an AI person. So it's an avatar. We also have some secret products like coming out of this. But what I want to say, what you see here has been built fully out of open source stack. Not a single dollar paid for building this to any kind of a fees or licenses. All kind of these cool things can be built with open source if you know how. And that's what I want to devote the rest of our presentation to. So now we know what it can do, how cool it is. I would like to talk a little bit about how to do it. So first of all is, okay, maybe it's cool, maybe it's great, but what is really the equation for a company to do it? So of course, the primary factor why open source AI should be used, it's cheap. It's much cheaper than everything else. Actually, if I go for a while back, this AI Clip Hero, there are products like that. I will not name them, but there is quite a few products on the market which are there, which you can use to do exactly the thing. So you give him a long, either YouTube clip or video, and they cut it into a smaller clips which are shareable on a Reels, TikTok, or whatever you want to do it. Now, when I arrived into Common Salt, we had an offer from several of those companies. But we decided to build our own product because at the end, it turned out to be, it was 1/3 of the price. So if we have to take it from the paid service, it would cost us 3 times more to operate it. And that's kind of a main thing. So it's obviously much cheaper, but that's not the whole story. And you need to be a little bit able to give something back from the money that you save. So first thing which you should count on, first thing which you should count on is that the advantage of the proprietary AI models is that they host it for you. So they provide the platform. So these paid services, which are kind of competing with our AI Clip Hero, all you have to do is you have to upload your video there. And you as a user don't have to do anything else. So that's certainly a help. So if you have to replicate it, you have to count on then it's going to cost something you to actually analyze the videos, go through it, store it, give it away, download it, and so on. So some hosting costs. It's really usually a small fraction of the total cost. So this ratio of the arrows is actually quite drawn to the scale here. The second thing which is important to realize is then when you're going to build this, okay, like you can't walk on a random Sophia Street and take somebody by hand and said, I want you to build my open source. It obviously needs some skills to make it happen. Many people think it takes a lot of skills. To be honest with you, not that many, but it still does need some skills. So, and people who can do it, they know that they can kind of ask for more. So usually people working on open source projects are somewhat more expensive. So they need to be the better ones. They can't be the usual ones. So we need to reserve a little bit of a money for like paying for the people more than you would have to pay for somebody who is using just already cooked up proprietary software. But that's about it. And then it brings one more thing. And as I said, if you remember, when we were going through this thought of what it is positive and negative about the proprietary AI and open source AI, I mentioned that speed to delivery is important. So some companies go for proprietary solutions because they want to have it fast, because they think if I do this first, I'm going to colonize the market and I take an advantage. So there's another factor which you need to take into consideration, that if you're going to try to build open source, it's going to take some time, usually 2 to 3 months. So maybe you're losing some money not being on the market. But I can tell you that it's not more than 3 months. So if you can't build it in open source in 3 months, you have a bad team. There is certainly a team which can build it in 3 months with the open source. So with that having said, this gray area can be different for different industries, because if there is nobody doing it or nobody planning to do it, maybe you didn't lose the revenue, you're just going to get it later. If there are already many companies trying, you not entering the market can be a bit dangerous, right? So as a result, what I can tell you from the experience is that open source is cheaper by 70 to 55%. That's enormous. For us, it was closer to the 70 part. For many companies, it may be close to 40, 50 part, but still, it's significantly cheaper, and it's significantly cheaper after also taking into consideration the extra things, even after taking into consideration your lost revenue, so for you to waiting. So economically, if you are a company who wants to build an AI solution and you want to operate that solution for longer, you should not think anything else than open source. There are two main reasons for that. First of all is the cost trap, because even if you can make your service profitable, so you can charge more to your customers than you are paying to the provider of the AI services, you never know how long the prices of the AI provider will be stable. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that you don't have any competitive advantage. So anybody can use that third-party proprietary API or tool like ChatGPT and build the very, very same thing you have in few hours, because you have no competitive advantage. So if you want to like compete in a market with AI service, going open source AI is the only option for you that you can go. So with that having said, let's move on to how. So, okay, Filip, you've been kind of selling us that we should do it. We get it. Maybe we even believe you. Now, how we should actually do it. So I think there are ultimately 4 important decisions which you need to check. And these are validations which you should like double check with yourself before you go into it. So let me go quickly through them. First of all, can I? So I told you that open source AI advantage is that it's free to use. But among open source AIs, the cool and the key thing is, what's the license? And unfortunately, maybe with like software license, the software licenses are very similar. With open source, the licenses are very different. So let me do a crash course for you with the licenses. Now, if you think about the license, so I have a right to use it. There are several things which you need to be careful about. So, A, can I do whatever I wish? So let's take the analogy of the free car. Imagine that the open source was a car which is parking on a street and you can take it. Am I allowed to go to the different countries? Am I allowed to drive 100,000 kilometers with it? What's the limitation, right? Do I have a right to change something about it? Maybe I don't like the color of it. Can I repaint it? Can I, maybe I don't like the DVD player in it. Can I change it? So these are the questions that you need to also make sure that you know about your AI model and which one you take. Then come one which are super important, because you're going to build it for a reason to earn money on it. So does the model actually allow for that? And you have to be careful, because back then in 90s or like beginning of the 2000s, maybe like in these Napster times and like sharing videos on a portals and music, Now we're in an era that's not safe anymore. Like if you infringe somebody's right, some lawyers will come after you and you will get a nasty fine, or you might go into the jail even. So you have to be careful. Can I use it for commercial purposes? Can I actually sell it? So can I take the free car and sell it? And then sounds ridiculous, because for the car example, why would somebody leave on a car on the street that you can sell? But in open source AI, this is the case. There are models which you can take and you can sell them as they are. It's amazing. It's just for people who are not working with this might sound like a fairy tale. Then you have other things which you need to consider. So, okay, the model comes with certain rights, but am I allowed to use it differently? So am I allowed to limit my customers? Okay, the model tells me I can generate 1 million images per day. Can I set it in a way that my customers can only do 5, and if they do 6, they have to pay for it? Maybe you want to do it like there is a maximum limit that you can do per month or whatever. Can I do that? One thing which you will be surprised to see on a list of important things is if your code stays secret. And I'm going to explain what that means, because some of the models require you to publish the code. It's like something for something. So we give you this open source AI model, but you have to publish your code using it. And that's not always very useful if you build business which might have a competitors. And then a few more things about the pattern and mentioning. So these are the dimensions. So on these dimensions, your best thing you can do is look for a model which is an Apache 2 type. We will not go into why it is named Apache 2, that's not important. But when you're going to review open source models on a Hugging Face, as I'm going to show you in a while, there is always what kind of license it has. And if it has Apache 2, you can do anything with it. You can take it, you can repaint it, you can crash it, you can go into the foreign country, sell it, whatever. There's almost no limitation. The only thing is you need to stay legal, so you're not allowed to kill or harness somebody with that. But besides that, which I guess none of you would be doing anyway, it's free. Very similar to that is MIT license. The only difference is that you don't have a patent right. But honestly, for solutions which you don't really need a patent, right? Like you will not try to make it your trademark or whatever. So for that sake, for most of the applications, you don't really care. So for many users, the Apache and MIT license are the same, and you don't have to worry about it. There is one more license, which is called BSD3, which is not that common, but it's almost the same thing. So these three are very common. What is great about Apache 2 and MIT, which BSD cannot do, is you can even sell it's powered by the releaser. So you know that Google or Meta or OpenAI or whoever, they release an open source model. And what is great that with Apache 2 and MIT license, you can even say, this is model powered by Meta. This is model powered by Google. You literally can make your product look better by citing that it is done the AI by Google. And it's your own product and you can still charge money for it. Isn't it amazing? So BSD cannot do that. That's the only difference. But besides that, it's all the same. Now, there come more licenses which are not that great. So, for instance, GPL license, you can see that it's already a little bit problematic because your code does not stay secret. So GPL as a license requires that, okay, you can use me, but whatever you're going to build with me has to be also open source. So it's kind of, whenever you touch this, it needs to be open source as well. So some of the businesses might be okay with it. Like if you're, for instance, doing it for some third sector, some charity or whatever, they probably don't care if the code is public or not. But most of the paying businesses would have probably issue with that. Then there are two more licenses which I want to mention, that they are not that permissive and they are not that good. So what I would suggest is don't look on the right side of this screen. Always look on the left side of this screen. So when you're going to look for the model, look for the Apache, MIT, or BSD3. And when you find license like that, you're good to go, and you can do almost anything with that. You don't have to worry about it. You're good to go. If we do have any questions to that, I'm super happy to answer them in the follow-up session. So don't forget to write down on a Slido, join the Slido and write a question if you do have. I'm super happy to answer anything in detail. Okay, so that's the first question. Can I? So if you find a model which is Apache 2, MIT, or BSD3, you can. You can build your own product with that. You don't have to limit yourself. Now, the second question is, will I be able to? And that sounds like, Filip, but isn't it the same thing? If I can, I'm able to. Not really. So what you need to understand that the models which are built, some of them are really huge. And when you're going to experiment with them, you will need to have a very strong computer, not even maybe one computer, but a cluster of computers to run them. So I want to give you a practical rule how to think about it. So in order for the model to run, usually what they are built on, their like number of parameters. So you will find out that this is a 2 billion parameters model. This is a 150 million parameters model. So as a rule of thumb, right? So billion is a giga in IT space. So if you have a 1 billion of parameters, then model will require at least 4 gigabytes of the GPU memory. Why is it important? This might sound too technical for you, but it's actually very important for you to realize this. Because if you look at the usual graphic cards that you can get in a computer, it's ranging from 10 gigabytes to about 24 gigabytes. There are better than this, but they are not in a computer. They would be in a data center. So I guess when you're going to try open source, you're going to try it on your own computer laptop or computer server maybe. So most of the servers would have up to, let's say, 24 gigabytes. And these 24 gigabytes are very expensive ones. So you would assume that you would be somewhere in a range from 10 to 16 gigabytes. What that means is that you can only run on your machine models which have 3 to 6 billion parameters, and for the 6 billion you would already need the 24 gigabyte of the RAM. So you will be somewhere between 3 and 5, maybe 3 and 4 billion parameters. This is important to choose because nobody will stop you to download a very large model, but then it would not work for you. So you need to intentionally look for the models which are no big than 4 billion. Otherwise, it will not work for you. Hopefully it's not too technical and it's practical for you to think about it. If that was not clear enough, I'm super happy to answer more in a QA session. Now, okay, so we explained the second thing. If you remember, we said there are 4 things which you need to think about. Can I? Will I be able to? And there are 2 more. So now we on the left side resolved, okay, it's feasible. It's doable. I have a model and I have a model which fits on my hardware to try. So I can try. Now, how do I try? And that's the last 2 pieces I want to talk today about. So first thing is where to go. So there is a portal which is called Hugging Face, which is aggregating all of the open source AI models. As I said, there's 1.5 million models on Hugging Face, which you can download anytime. So you go there, you pick a model, you download it, you can use it. It's literally like you walk the street, you find a car, it's free, you jump into it, you drive it. It's really amazing. Now, on this Hugging Face portal, the models are also categorized based on what they do. So it's probably a little bit small on my screen, but hopefully you can see it. There's like audio to text, there's like video to text, image to image. So you can have multiple approaches, and when you click on it, you're going to have the best models. And what is great about it, they are sorted by how popular to use they are. So that's a good indicator, because if you have nothing, if you know nothing about the models, and you know that this model is used by 100,000 people and this model is used by 5 people, I would probably go after the 100,000 people because it is well tested, it works, and it will get you to the result faster. Now, because there is so many of them on the Hugging Face, you need something else. You need to have an orientation on how good they are. And for that, there's something which is called a chatbot arena. So this one, which I cite here, is a leaderboard for the large language models. So for models like Gemini, Claude, or Open AI GPT. But there are also arenas for different types. So you can have comparisons of the image generating models. You can have comparison of the video models. So you can have them all compared. And why I suggest you to do this? Because this is changing so often that it's really worth to bookmark this and go look. Because maybe from the moment that you started to think about the project until you come to the realization, there is a model which is also open source, also can be used, and it's like 3 times better than what you had when you started. So that's quite important to understand. And also here on you see that they have also a license type mentioned. Also on a Hugging Face, all the license types are mentioned. So if you remember, go for Apache 2 MIT or BSD3, pick a model. You can benchmark it how good it is. You can even think about, is it make sense? Is it big enough? Is it that it fits into my memory, and all these considerations. So that's where to go. You can literally download it. On Hugging Face, there are also pre-programmed snippets of the code which are actually running the model. Usually you need to be somewhat versed in Python or similar languages that you can run the code. But honestly, there are also like AIs can help you with that. So there are AIs who can run another AIs. So if you have something which can code like Claude, Sonnet 3.7 is the best one so far. So if you have that, you can tell it, I'm going to use this specific model of open source. Can you write a small code for me to operate it? And it will. It will write a code for you. So you don't even have to know how to code in order to try. It's really amazing. But if you want to integrate this into your company, so let's say that you want to make it somewhat linked to what you do. Let's say you are an agency, and when you automate some of your image generating, or you are doing copywriting and you want to save time by having a draft from the AI first before finally copywriter approves. So for that, you need to integrate it. And there are 3 most common ways to do it. And this is the piece. If you remember from the graph, I told you that it needs a little bit of expertise to make it happen. So this is the area where the expertise need to come. It's relatively easy to find a model. It's relatively easy to download it. But in order to make it really useful for something, not just to play like a playground sandbox, then it needs to be integrated. When you think about integrating, you would usually consider 5 things. 1, like how costly it is for me to try. Because if I need to put €1 million on a table to try, not that many people will, right? So that's the first aspect. The second aspect is, okay, I build a prototype. Now, how fast this prototype can actually do the real thing? How many images per day I will be able to generate? How many texts per day I will be able to review? Because if you're running in a particular company, let's say you are an insurance company and you are processing the claims, well, you're going to have hundreds, thousands, maybe tens of thousands per day, right? So if you develop a solution, then the solution needs to be able to scale. And that's the third thing as well. The fourth thing is like, can it be part of the other product? How easy it is to put into something else? So let's say I already have a platform where my claim adjusters from the insurance company are working on the claims from the customers. How easy it is to put an extra functionality there, which is, I don't know, scanning the PDF or writing an email to the customer. And then the last piece is the speed to launch. If you remember, this was a thing which we're coming over and over again. AI is moving so fast that may be an advantage in time, like I have it quickly in production, may be more important for you than what the cost of it is. So then where the trade-off comes in. So the first way to do it is called a mini app wrapper. What that means is a small, usually Python, but doesn't have to be, code that is wrapping around the model just to make sure that it can interact with the others. So if it is a model which is asking you a question, that you need to have a field where you type in the question, right? Because the model is going to run in background, it doesn't have a window. This is exactly what the companies who are offering your services are doing. They are allowing the wrapper around the models in backend. Now, the good thing here is it's super cheap because even AI can build it for you. So you can go to AI and tell him, I want to have a mini wrapper around this model, and it's going to write a code for you. All you need to is run the code. So it's very easy to try. However, the problem of this is it doesn't scale well. So it's good for prototyping, for you showing the colleagues how it's going to work or getting approval from your manager. But it's not really good for production. So very often if you do this, it's just for demonstrating purposes or for like, let's say, trying if this is possible at all. And then speed to launch, it's super fast. You can literally have it in hours. You download the model, you ask AI to give you a wrapper. In a few hours, you can have a prototype. Super fast. The other thing which you can consider is building your own API service. And when you're going to work for a company who is building AI features or products, this is going to be the most common way to do it. So what that means is that in the cloud infrastructure like AWS, Azure, Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud, you will have a service called API, which you call it, and it takes your request, it does everything on the background and sends you the answer. Now, this is very useful because then you can dock it into any product. So this is why it can be it can be a small feature running in the background, and it doesn't need to have like a front end or whatever. It's not that cheap to build because like you need to know how to build the API, how to operate it, how to make it scalable. But the throughput capacity is enormous. So this is the minimal standard that you will need if you want to do something for a company business and you want to like earn money on it. You want to have a paid service, it needs to be something like that. Now you would think, Filip, okay, well, this should be good enough. What is the third one? So there are some companies who even their own infrastructure, their own APIs are not quick enough. So for instance, they need to run millions of the queries at the same time. Well, they can't possibly have their own infrastructure. So what they're going to do, they're going to use it as a third-party hosted service. And there are services already, like Together AI or a few others, which allow you to rent. So they allow you to rent a computer on which the model is already running. So you come and you say, I want to have a Llama 3 running, and just give me an API on which I throw the request, and it's going to reply to me, and I don't have to care anything about the orchestration. So, of course, this is more convenient, and like this gives you more capacity because basically these providers have almost unlimited amount of GPUs. However, it's also more costly, right? So it's not that cheap to operate. And usually it is a bit more kind of complicated to also negotiate the prices stable. So that's the thing. So, okay. So that's how to do it. Now we got almost to the end, but I wanted to say one more important thing for us, and that is why you should care. So I think the whole of the presentation I explained why the company should care, and if you are responsible for product management or for developing a strategy of your company, now maybe your wheels are already spinning in the background, okay, what everything I can use it for. But if you are just a person working, or you're your own business owner, like you own your own small business, why should you care? Well, there are 3 reasons. First of all, almost everybody who is now using AI is using it as a paid service or like third-party proprietary service, to be fair. Maybe he's using a free tier of it. Like ChatGPT also has a number of queries you can do per day for free. But that will change. They'll come to the point that they will not offer free queries. They do now because they still want to attract people to try. But there will come a time where not. And the problem here is that imagine that you are an employee who works on an AI. Now you're using OpenAI or Google Gemini, whatever. Now there comes another person who can do the same. You have almost zero competitive advantage. So you are replaceable. You as a person are just a user. And what is even worse, like the service can disappear as well. So maybe you bet your life on like, I can do this in Open's AI, ChatGPT, but I can't do it in anywhere else. What if OpenAI is forbidden in your country or gets super expensive that your employer doesn't want to do it anymore? Now you're out of the game. There's also a second reason why this is important. If you remember this equation that we had, and I told you that people using or are being able to use open source are more expensive. So I can tell you, because I'm hiring a lot of people in this area, that the ones which are skilled in open source get usually 40 to 60% better salary. The reason for that is anybody can do ChatGPT, not everybody can do open source. So if you are in a group who can do open source, you are actually much better positioned on the market and your value is higher. So think about it and try to kind of foresee if this is something which you don't want to bet on, because, and there's a third thing, most of the innovative projects are not built on a third-party service wrappers. The reason for that is because if you want to build something really innovative and you build it on a OpenAI ChatGPT or Cloud Gemini or Anthropic Cloud, anybody can. Like, you're not getting any extra advantage. So you are also not protected from your competition. So the companies which want to be protected from the competition, you want to build a service and you want to be your service. You want this be your differentiator, maybe your unique selling proposition for the customers. Then you go for open source. Because that gives you an edge that it's not that easy to copy you. It's not unthinkable, but not many companies will be able to copy you because only 35% of the projects are done open source. So most of the projects are still done with using the third-party APIs, proprietary APIs. But if you want to work really on innovative projects, you should go for open source. And that concludes the presentation from my side. I am super happy for your attention, and I'm really eager to see your questions on Slido, so I will move to Slido in a while. I just want to remind you, there's a whole episode about open source AI, which is taking it to even further implications, which I didn't have time to discuss today. So if this lecture actually inspired you, go and download the QR link on a MI Mindset podcast, and you can watch the episode. Or go to my blog, or use any of these contacts to reach out to me if you have any questions or you're shy to ask today. And that's all from my side. Thank you for attention. And now we're going to turn to Slido to answer your questions. Cool. All right. So I'm gonna start with first question. There is from Atanas. The question goes, the proprietary versions are without limitations, aren't they? Without the limitations of the context length of the prompt, without limitations of the count and frequency of questions to ask within a prompt and within the same time period. Okay, that's a good question, but it's actually not true. A lot of companies try to let you think that way, but they have something which is called a fair policy, fair use policy. It's a little bit like if you have unlimited a flat program on your mobile, you can't actually be on a mobile the whole month, right? If you leave your mobile running the whole month, there'll be somebody from your provider calling like, hey, you're misusing our service, so we are like dismantling your program and you are not allowed to be our customer anymore. Now, I'm using an extreme example, but believe me, in AI, there are many limitations. So the paid services want to create impression that they are actually unlimited, but very often they are. And the reason for that is that they have to serve so many customers and they need to protect themselves. Like, you can't allow, like this Ghibli, hey, right? So we have a great example. So OpenAI declares you can do as many images you want. Not when we launch Ghibli, only 3. Right? So that's a kind of clear explanation that there come moments where the proprietary services actually limit their service. And this is where you have to be careful about. All right. Okay, there's quite a few questions. So let me answer the second one. So concerning your career path, that you have not started as a tech person but succeeded in AI, do you think one could succeed not coming from a tech too, but firstly to enter IT, coding infrastructure, and after having that as a pit stop, then to enter AI? Is there a time for the longer path for 140 plus? Okay, so I think there are 3 things in this question. So let me answer them one by one. So first of all, do I believe that a non-IT and non-AI person can start a career? Absolutely, I do. That's what I did. It's not automatic, so not everybody can. But if you know what you want to do and you're ready to kind of learn and work hard on it, you can. So that's first part of it. Now, does it make sense to go through IT coding infrastructure? That's an interesting one. I have to say 2 years back, I would answer yes. Now I'm answering no. And the reason for that is that if you only enter IT first place, you're going to be probably on a relatively junior level. And I'm sorry to say, but the AI is already better in coding than the junior programmers. So you will not get any advantage going into IT. But maybe let me not confuse you. I think it is good to have the IT skills, but I don't believe that in a way that I'm going to take an IT job first and then I'm going to get to AI job is feasible anymore. No, you should probably go directly after the AI job, and you should know that part of being able to do the AI job is also important that you know the IT part. So it's good to know some coding, even if the coding is done by AI, because then you can correct it, you can maybe challenge it to more efficient solution, and so on. So that's the second part of the question. The third part of the question, is there time for the longer path for somebody 40 plus? That's the most trouble part of this question, to be honest. I'm 40 plus myself, and I can tell you it's about the last few quarters that you can still enter AI. If you don't do it now, it's going to be too late. Because the AI is progressing so fast that if you are junior in AI if you start AI in year from now, you will not catch up. The AI will go faster than you, and you will be never good enough to actually earn a decent living. Maybe you're going to be lucky and you're going to find some job, but the perspective will be relatively limited. So if you're thinking about entering AI, please do that immediately. Don't wait. I don't think so there's time for like a longer pathway anymore. I hope that answers the question. If not, then feel free to add another on top of us. So there's a third one, so far last one. So if you do have any question, please go to Slido and put it in, because I'm just about to answer last question. So it's a last call for questions. If there are no more questions after this one, we'll have to stop. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer questions. We agreed with Unisol we will not go until the morning, but the night is young. So we can answer many questions if you wish. So the question goes following. My background is in international commerce, retail, but not online. And retail real estate, managing vast projects. Requalifying now myself in IT infrastructure and programming. Which of my skills are most transferable? Which AI niches are not delusive for small projects? Too many IT people lack pragmatic aims. Oh, that's a nice one. I have to say I do agree to almost all aspects of this question, and whoever is firing it, thumbs up. I think you're doing a great job in thinking about it. Now let me answer one by one. So, if you remember in my presentation, I said that the critical thing about the open source AI is the way to integrate it into the other services. You can build your self-prototype with an easy wrapper, that's not a problem, but this will not earn you money, or this will usually not help many people. Maybe it will help you to make your job a bit more efficient, but it's not a sustainable business model. So if you want to use AI for commercial reasons or like money earning reasons, you need to integrate it. So from AI infrastructure, being able to like knowing how the cloud services work, knowing how APIs work, knowing how to put a code behind the API are things which are super essential for building the AI, especially because, and we didn't talk about it, this is the first time I mention agents, AI agents. It's amazing after an hour. But the next phase of the AI will be developing individual small skills or tasks which will be combined working together. So you will have application which can read well PDFs. You will have an application which can talk on the phone with a customer. And then you will have a service which can take the email that a person sends, scan it, and talk about it over the phone. And this will be a combination of the elements. Now for that, the APIs, the infrastructure is even more important. So I think IT infrastructure is super, super important. Programming, kind of, okay, nice to have. But IT infrastructure is the thing. Actually, if you are hyped for open source AI after my lecture, what you should do, you should try to study the cloud, Azure, AWS, or GCP, Google Cloud, and you should study how to do APIs. Everything else can do the AI for you. This integration part is going to be the last piece that will stand as a human interaction in that. Now, the question has also other aspects. So which AI niches are not delusive for small projects? I'm not sure if I'm the best respondent for that question, but I can tell you that usually the way to look at it is not how obscure it is, but what percentage of the original time or costs it saves. So if you are in real estate and again, I'm going to give you an example. It's a stupid one. Apologies, I'm not part of the real estate industry, but like just for the sake of example. So if you were before required to go and look at the land plots for, let's say, planning of the projects, and it took you some time and some money to go to the place, to make photographs, to maybe write a document about it. Now, writing an AI, which takes either a drone images or something and does the report automatically, sounds very niche to me. Doesn't sound like there will be thousands and hundreds of thousands of people needing the same thing. But it doesn't really matter. If it costs you before, I don't know, 2,000-3,000 euros to travel there, do the photographs, spend some time on the reports, create the reports, and so on. Now, if AI can take it from 2,000-3,000 to 20 or 30 euros, now you have a hell of a good business plan, because you just saved a 90+% of the costs, right? So I would not think about it how niche or mainstream the thing is. Of course, if you want to compete with OpenAI, well, then you better do something which is a broad appeal. But if that's not the case, don't think about it in terms of how niche it is. Think about it how much savings it brings. And that's probably the best way to think about it. Cool, thank you. Moving to another question. So it's from Paulina. And it's what innovative products or services can be created using open source AI? Are there any emerging trends or unique applications that leverage its potential in new and exciting ways? So again, few things mentioned here, so let me answer one by one. So I would say, Paulina, almost any service that you can think of can be transferred into open source. And I don't want to be too scary, but I cannot think of a job which couldn't be replaced by AI, at least to significant amount. So I also think that the way this will go further is that AI will focus on doing particular tasks and jobs. This is where it seems to be going. So we will get an AI call center operator. We will get an AI therapist. We will get an AI claim adjuster, and so on. So I don't think so that you need to really look for like a brilliant idea. Maybe pick an area which you understand. So maybe if the whole life you worked on, like, I don't know, planning light systems and delivering lights into the houses and buildings, well, then think about how can AI do it for you? How could probably AI do the things which people in that industry had to do before? I think it's really any area you can think of. The second part of the question is, does it leverage any potential in new and exciting ways? So I don't know how about yourself, but almost any implication or way of using AI that I see is amazing to me. So I find it pretty exciting. I have to say that we are still in a first era of AI agents and products. This will be a lot of cool things, but the second stage era, where these already cool things will combine each other, working together, that will be really a magic. That will be the sci-fi. And this will come probably in like 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 years, but no more. So I think that it'll get only more exciting and more exciting over the time. Cool. So we have a last question. So again, last call. If you do have a question, it's your last chance to write it. After answering this one, will be no more. And that will mean that I will not torture you into the night listening to me anymore, and we will close the flow. So here's the last question so far asked. How do you know if there are any AI models that can run locally on a mobile device? Can they be used for anything except prototypes? Oh, that's a great question. Unfortunately, like discussing all the important aspects of going mobile would be for probably yet another hour, hour and a half. But just to honor the question, not to run away from it. The limitation which I showed you is also true for mobiles. So this model parameters times 4 in order to check if it fits into your memory of your GPU, of your graphic card processor, that is same true for mobile. But generally speaking, I have to say that so far the solutions for mobile were running in 2 different pathways or 2 different rails, which are getting further and further from each other. And I have to be fair, both of them are possible and both of them are doable and have their meaning. So the one pathway is the one you ask for. So I expect I'm gonna have a local model on my phone running, which will be generating the answers on a local environment. Now, that is good, and it has many implications, but honestly, what is the issue here, that running an AI models, very intensive ones, on a GPUs, heats them up. So mobile phones are designed in a way that if they overheat, they shut down or they limit the compute capacity that you have. So I think that if you are thinking about a function or operation which will run for a short time, then having a model on the device is probably okay idea. However, if this is something like, let me use an analogy of navigation. So if navigation was as heavy in compute as AI is, it would not work on a mobile, and it would need to stream from somewhere. And this is exactly what happens with the navigation. If you think about it, most of the navigations, I mean, the original first one where they were like running with a local information like a TomToms and Guardians and similar things of the world, they were running on a local, and you were like all the maps of I don't know, Bulgaria or wherever you go were loaded in the device. Of course, we know it's impractical because roads change, there are closures, constructions, and so on. So it's not optimal. But most of the navigations are running that you need to be connected to internet to get the navigation, especially like Google Maps. If you don't have an internet, well, you can have a local Google Maps, but it's not as good as having it from the environment. And if you are using anything like a road assistance, like Vame or Waze or whatever other applications, you are much better off having the internet, because also tells you that there is a car crash and then you need to go on an alternative road and so on. So therefore, the other pathway, how things are done on AI on mobile devices, is that you don't assume that the model will be in the environment, but it will be running on some kind of a server. And of course, this requires a different approach. So you will not actually try to fit the model into the phone, so it can be even more powerful than the phone itself would need, but then it becomes heavy on the integration part. So you need to have a network which is able to have a very fast back and forth exchange of the information, so that the user does not feel it is somewhere in a server far away. So that's always a trade-off between, will the user notice if I need to go to the server to ask for this, or will the user not notice? And if the user will notice, then the local implementation would be prevailing. If the user does not notice, the cloud implementation where you have the model running on a server is probably better. So both are possible. Honestly, so far the cloud version is more prominent than on the local machine, but it might change. By the way, it's a great question. Thank you for one. Another question. You're good at asking the last question when I ask the last question. I'm fine to play this game. So if another one comes, I'm going to still answer it. So the question goes following. Will human programming in the sense of software development get extinct totally, at all removed by AI? So this is not necessarily kind of subject of our talk today, because if the software development will be extinct, it doesn't have to be by open source. It probably is going to be by proprietary models, by the way. But I'll still answer the question. I'm afraid to great extent, yes. And it's maybe not nice, but for many people, IT has been like a gold mine. For many people, they were trying to change career from something non-IT related to something IT related. And maybe 3-4 years back, this was a great idea. I was invited to university to talk about AI with an AI students, and they were in their 4th out of the 5 years of the master program. And so they were eager. So hey, you are like a big shot. You are an executive VP of AI. So what kind of a career is to have in AI? And I said, well, honestly, I'm not sure if it's a good bet for you. And they all froze because they were in a 4th year of studying like AI. And here comes a guy from like AI industry, and he says like he's not sure if that's a good idea. But I'm being honest. Like the problem here is that the AI is already as good as junior programmers. So if you start now, you will never catch up. There was this question about the 40 plus years. So if you want to start with AI, very, very last chance, and you need to like know what you're doing, in a year from now, it'll be too late. And the same is true for software development. I would say like 90% of it or more will be replaced by AI. I'm going to tell you something which is not nice, but it's true. If I was now building a new company, I would be not thinking about the humans first anymore. Because it would be not giving me enough competitive advantage. I would be thinking about how can I do it with as least human effort as possible. And not because I hate people or I don't want to give a jobs, no. But if you really think into the future, if you want to be competitive, most of the most progressive startups and companies which are starting now are not like expecting to have 200 programmers in a year 3 or 4 of their existence. So I really think that the programming might extinct to great share of it. Okay, next question. What about the process of integration of the AI with an automation of hardware, not only IT hardware, but also any kind of industrial and robotics? Is that not going to become the leading profession in AI and application of AI among all other applications? So if the question is if the integrations of the AI into the physical machines is promising, then the answer is yes. But I think we are looking at it from the wrong perspective. Because, okay, so what it takes for a software AI model to be implemented into the hardware. And the answer is for the software to be well written. Now, if AI can write at par or better code than humans, why would we expect that the software put into the robots would be the ones done by humans? So I think it's going to be promising industry, but probably not on implementation of but more on like engineering side. So the hardware of the robots is still behind a little bit of the software. So working on improving the hardware to be able to use all the benefit of the software is promising, but honestly, I'm not sure how many people will have the job. It's the same thing when I'm hiring. A lot of people come to my interviews and they say, yeah, and I ask them, so if you have a dream project, what would you like to work on? And they say, well, I would like to build a next ChatGPT. And I said, wow, that's great. But do you realize how many people on the earth will be building next ChatGPT? And they say, yeah, quite. No. The answer is probably few tens. Because there will be only few companies who will survive. And they will need only like some teams to build it. And everybody else will be consuming it. Because like, it's the same thing. How many people still build a new Mercedes in their garages? Almost nobody does. Of course, there are still some people who can, like auto mechanics, who can fix your car, who maybe even can change your car, who maybe even like as a hobby can build cars of their own. But nobody will build like Mercedes Benz in their own garage. So as much as I think this is a promising industry, I'm not sure if it's promising for humans. So I'll be a little bit careful with the expectations there. Okay, next question. We are coming to the point over and over again, now from a different angle. So it's the third time we are kind of getting to this, but I'll still try to answer. So do you think that careers in IT infrastructure will get extinct too? That's a good one. It's not unthinkable for the AI to manage its own infrastructure, but it's less likely than to manage its own software. The reason for that is that even the biggest AI models will need to have some kind of a kill switch, some kind of a master on-off. If it goes really, really wrong, it starts to do strange things. It starts to kind of, initiate a war or whatever. There needs to be a way to switch it off. So I think we as humans will not give all the power of the actual physical infrastructure to the AI itself. So if I have to make a joke, I think an IT admin is less of a dinosaur than a programmer. Programmer is going to be a bit of a dinosaur when the meteorite hits. I think the IT infrastructure might survive a bit longer. Okay, well, that concludes the questions. So thank you for very engaging involvement. I hope you liked the presentation. It's going to be probably shared afterwards from organizers. And it was my pleasure. I let you remind that if this kind of is not going to happen. So I let you remind you that if you're interested in the open source AI, go and check the Mindset podcast. I appreciate if you kind of look and give us a feedback as well. By the way, we do Mindset podcasts for whatever the audience votes as a topic. So on a mindsetpodcast.com, you can even vote for a topic you would like to hear. So feel free to kind of upvote a topic which you would be interested in. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to join or reach out. It was a pleasure, and I wish you all a nice evening. Have a great